The Alpha King was breaking, and only the broken Omega dared to step closer. Rain swept through the ruined moon chapel, turning the pale stone floor into a mirror of silver light. Claire Bennett stood beneath the shattered archway, her white dress heavy with water, her dark blonde hair clinging to her cheeks as thunder rolled across the mountains. Less than 20 feet away, a massive black wolf paced beneath the broken dome, his silver eyes bright with fear, his breathing sharp and uneven. The royal guards remained near the entrance, silent and uncertain. They knew the wolf was Ethan Blackwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. They also knew he no longer recognized anyone around him. "Miss Bennett," Commander Daniel Brooks called softly, "please come back." Claire heard him, but she did not move. The wolf's low growl echoed through the chapel, yet beneath it she sensed something the others could not. Not anger, pain. It reached her like a quiet voice beneath deep water, touching the empty place inside her where her own wolf had once lived. 3 years ago, that place had fallen silent. 3 years ago, her pack had named her broken and taught her to believe she would never be whole again. But now, facing the most powerful wolf in the kingdom, Claire felt something stir beneath her ribs. Ethan was not trying to frighten them, he was trying not to lose himself. Another roll of thunder shook the ancient windows. The black wolf stepped back toward the ruined altar, his claws pressing against the wet stone. Moonlight slipped through the open ceiling and revealed faint silver scars beneath his fur, delicate lines crossing his shoulder like frozen lightning. Claire's breath caught. Someone had once tried to control him. No wonder he feared every hand that reached too quickly. "Claire," Daniel warned again, "he may not know who you are." She swallowed, keeping her voice calm. "Then he needs someone who remembers who he is." The chapel fell silent. Claire moved forward, one careful step at a time. The wolf turned toward her, and every guard behind her held his breath, but she kept her hands at her sides. She did not command him. She did not call him king. She simply allowed him to see that she was afraid and had chosen to stay anyway. "I know what it feels like," she whispered, "when everyone looks at you and only sees what is wrong." Ethan's ears shifted, his restless pacing slowed. Claire took another step until only a few feet remained between them. Up close, he seemed made of midnight and storm clouds, yet his silver eyes held the exhausted loneliness of a man who had spent too long fighting battles no one else could see. Claire slowly lifted one hand. "You don't have to fight me." The wolf's warm breath touched her palm. For one suspended moment, neither of them moved. Then Ethan lowered his head. The Alpha King, who had never bowed before any court or rival, rested his brow against the hand of the Omega everyone had discarded. Warmth spread through Claire's chest. A heartbeat answered from the darkness inside her. Faint, but unmistakable. Her wolf was still there. Above them, the moonstone set into the chapel ceiling awakened with silver light, and the entire sanctuary began to hum, as though an ancient promise had finally remembered their names. 4 days earlier, Claire Bennett had woken before sunrise to the sound of a fox scratching softly at her door. Moonwater Lake lay beyond her small cottage, smooth and dark beneath the fading stars, while mist curled through the pines like pale ribbon. Claire wrapped a wool shawl around her shoulders and stepped outside, finding the animal beside the herb garden with one paw held carefully above the ground. "Easy," she whispered, lowering herself to the damp earth. The fox watched her with bright, frightened eyes, but it did not run. Animals rarely did. They seemed to understand that Claire would never force them closer than they wished to come. She placed her hand near its injured paw without touching it, breathing slowly until the trembling creature matched her rhythm. Warmth gathered in her palm, gentle as sunlight through a window. The fox relaxed. Its pain did not vanish, but the fear around it softened enough for Claire to clean the paw and wrap it in a narrow strip of linen. "There," she murmured. "You are not alone anymore." Behind her, the cottage door creaked open. 6-year-old Maisie Parker appeared in an oversized blue nightgown, her brown curls wild from sleep. You said that to me when I first came here, she said. Claire looked over her shoulder and smiled. It worked, did it not? Maisie considered the question seriously. Mostly. She walked closer and crouched beside Claire, keeping a respectful distance from the fox. Maisie had lived with her for nearly a year, ever since fever had taken the last of the child's family. No one in Silver Creek had officially named Claire her guardian. They simply stopped asking when Maisie would leave. Perhaps even the pack understood that two unwanted souls could become a kind of home for each other. The fox rose carefully and disappeared into the trees. Maisie watched it go, then looked at Claire's wrist. Thin silver lines had appeared beneath her pale skin. Does it hurt when you help them? Claire pulled down her sleeve. Only for a little while. Who helps you? The question landed more deeply than it should have. Claire turned toward the lake, where the first light of morning was beginning to touch the water. 3 years had passed since Caleb Morgan rejected her before the entire pack. 3 years since the ceremony that should have awakened her wolf had instead left only silence. Dr. Mason Hale had called it a permanent fracture of the wolf spirit. Others used simpler words. Defective. Empty. Broken. Claire had learned to carry those names quietly, as though silence could make them weigh less. She could soothe frightened animals, calm crying children, and ease the nightmares of weary wolves. Yet she could not reach the wounded place inside herself. I do not need help, she told Maisie at last. The child frowned but did not argue. That night, Claire fell asleep beside the cottage window with moonlight resting across her hands. In her dream, she stood in a forest she had never seen. A black wolf lay beneath ancient silver chains, his eyes glowing through the darkness. He did not growl. He only looked at her with a loneliness so familiar that her chest tightened. Then, a voice moved through the trees, deep and distant. Claire. She woke with her heart racing. On the nightstand, her mother's moonstone pendant was shining. Hundreds of miles north, Ethan Blackwood woke to the sound of his own name echoing through an empty room. Dawn had not yet reached Blackwood Citadel. Frost covered the tall windows, and cold blue light stretched across the stone floor of the royal chamber. Ethan sat upright beside the bed, breathing as though he had run for miles. A wooden chair lay overturned near the fireplace. Heavy curtains had been pulled loose from one wall. Across his wrists, the old silver scars burned beneath his skin. He closed his eyes and listened. For the first time in months, the wolf inside him was silent, not sleeping, listening. Ethan had lived with its anger since the Northern War ended 2 years earlier. Royal healers called the condition war-shade sickness, an affliction caused by grief, exhaustion, and too many memories carried without rest. They prescribed bitter tonics, meditation, and silver restraints during the worst nights. Nothing brought peace for long. Every time Ethan closed his eyes, the past returned in fragments. Empty villages, frightened families, soldiers asking him whether they would ever see home again. He remembered every promise he had made, and every promise he had failed to keep. A quiet knock sounded at the door. "Enter," Ethan said. Commander Daniel Brooks stepped inside, already dressed in the dark uniform of the Royal Guard. His gaze moved over the damaged room before settling on Ethan. He did not ask what had happened. After 2 years, neither of them needed the question. "The council is waiting," Daniel said. "They have brought 3 more candidates for the Luna selection." Ethan rose and reached for the black coat draped across a bench. "Send them home." "The council will object. They usually do," Daniel hesitated. "They believe a strong mate bond could steady your wolf." Ethan fastened the coat slowly, his expression unreadable. "A woman is not medicine, Daniel. I will not ask a stranger to surrender her life because the council fears what I might become." Something softened in Daniel's face, but before he could answer, footsteps approached in the corridor. An elderly royal healer entered carrying a sealed envelope. Dr. Eleanor Whitmore had served the Blackwood family since Ethan was a child, and she was one of the few people permitted to interrupt him without ceremony. "This arrived before dawn," she said. "No messenger, no royal mark." Ethan accepted the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing only a few handwritten lines. "In Silver Creek, near Moonwater Lake, lives an Omega who calms frightened creatures with her voice. She carries the gift of the old moon healers, though her pack calls her broken. Find Claire Bennett before the next full moon." Ethan read the name twice. Claire Bennett. The instant he whispered it, warmth moved through the scars on his wrists. His wolf lifted its head within him, not with rage, but recognition. A vision flashed across Ethan's mind. A small cottage beside dark water. A woman standing beneath silver moonlight. Dark blonde hair framed a pale, gentle face, and in her hand, a moonstone burned like a captured star. Ethan gripped the letter more tightly. "Prepare the horses," he said. Daniel glanced toward the frosted windows. "Silver Creek is nearly 300 miles away." Ethan looked north as if he could already see beyond the mountains. Deep inside him, the wolf spoke a single word with absolute certainty. "Her." "Then we leave, now." By late afternoon, the royal party reached the forests of Silver Creek, beneath a sky the color of brushed steel. Ethan had ordered the banners lowered before they entered packed territory. He wanted no celebration, no crowd, and no nervous line of Omegas waiting to be judged by a king they had never met. Daniel rode beside him along the narrow road, glancing toward the dense pines that bordered Moonwater Lake. "The pack house is less than 2 miles ahead," he said. Ethan nodded, but his attention had already shifted elsewhere. A quiet pull moved beneath his ribs, drawing him toward the water. His wolf had been restless throughout the journey, but not angry. It seemed alert, almost hopeful. Ethan had forgotten what hope felt like inside that part of him. "Continue to the pack house," he told Daniel. "I will meet you there." Daniel frowned. Alone. For a few minutes, Ethan turned his horse toward a smaller trail before his commander could argue. The path curved downhill through cedar and birch, carrying him closer to the lake. Mist floated above the dark water, and the air smelled of wet leaves, pine, and something faintly sweet. Lavender. Ethan slowed. The scent did not overwhelm his senses the way ceremonial perfumes did. It settled around him gently, like a memory he had not known he possessed. Then he heard a woman speaking. "Do not be afraid. I am only trying to help." Ethan dismounted and followed the voice through the trees, near the shoreline. Claire Bennett knelt beside an injured doe caught between fallen branches. Her dark blonde hair had come loose from its braid, and the sleeves of her plain blue dress were rolled to her elbows. A little girl with brown curls stood nearby holding a folded blanket. "Is she going to be all right?" the child asked. "She is frightened." "Maisie, that is making the pain feel worse." Claire placed one hand near the doe's shoulder and waited. She did not force contact. She breathed slowly until the animal stopped struggling, then guided it free with careful hands. Ethan watched from the shadows, unable to look away. Nothing about Claire matched the image the royal council praised in a future Luna. She wore no jewels. She carried no visible rank. Yet the fear around the doe faded beneath her voice, and Ethan felt the tension inside his own chest ease with it. His wolf moved closer to the surface, listening. Claire suddenly looked toward the trees. Her gray-blue eyes found him at once. "You can come out," she said. Ethan stepped into view. Maisie moved nearer to Claire, cautious but curious. Claire rose, brushing leaves from her skirt. "Are you lost?" she asked. No one had asked Ethan Blackwood that question in years. "Possibly," he answered. A faint smile touched her face. "The pack house is east of here," she pointed through the trees. "You missed the main road." Ethan should have thanked her and left. Instead, a sharp ache traveled through his shoulder, burning along the old silver scar beneath his coat. His wolf recoiled. Ethan gripped the nearest tree as his vision blurred. Claire crossed the distance between them before he could warn her away. "You are hurt. It is nothing." "It is not nothing if you can barely stand." Her hand hovered near his arm, waiting for permission. That small pause unsettled him more than fear would have. Ethan nodded once. The moment her fingers touched his sleeve, warmth passed through the scar. His wolf went completely still. Claire inhaled softly, as though she had felt something answer. For one suspended heartbeat, they simply stared at each other. Then the moonstone at Claire's throat began to glow. The light from Claire's moonstone spread across Ethan's coat in a soft silver glow. She drew her hand back, startled, but the warmth beneath her fingers remained. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the lake had gone still. "What was that?" Ethan asked. Claire closed her fingers around the pendant. "I do not know." It was not entirely true. The stone had belonged to her mother, and it had never responded to anyone before. Maisie watched them with wide eyes. "It likes him," she said. Claire gave the child a warning look, but Ethan almost smiled. The expression vanished when another wave of pain tightened his shoulder. Claire noticed. "My cottage is less than half a mile from here. I can look at the injury. You do not know me." Pain does not become less real because it belongs to a stranger. Her answer left him silent. Claire led him along the shoreline while Maisie walked ahead with the blanket. Inside the cottage, dried lavender hung above the windows, and shelves of labeled herbs covered one wall. Ethan sat near the fireplace as Claire carefully examined the old scar beneath his torn sleeve. Thin silver lines crossed his skin, colder than the rest of him. "This was not caused recently," she said. "No, it was never fully treated. The healers did what they could." Claire looked at him. "Did they ask before they touched you?" Ethan did not answer. She understood anyway. Her hand hovered over the scar. "May I?" He nodded. The moment her palm rested against his shoulder, warmth moved through him, quiet and steady. His wolf, usually restless beneath any healer's touch, remained calm. Claire felt an answering pull beneath her ribs. The emptiness inside her shifted, as though something long asleep had turned toward the sound of his breathing. Then hoofbeats approached outside. The cottage door opened, and Daniel stepped in, followed by 2 royal guards. All 3 men bowed. "Your Majesty," Daniel said. "The pet council is waiting." Claire's hand fell away. The room suddenly felt colder. She looked from the guards to Ethan, understanding arriving slowly and painfully. "You are the Alpha King." Ethan stood. "Yes." "Did you know who I was when you came to the lake?" He hesitated for one heartbeat too long. Claire's face closed. "So this was not an accident." "I came to Silver Creek because I heard about your gift, but meeting you there was not planned." "You should have told me." "You are right." His immediate agreement unsettled her more than an excuse would have. Ethan did not command her forgiveness. He simply lowered his gaze and said, "I am sorry." Claire opened the door. "The council is waiting for you." Ethan left without protest. That evening, Claire attended the moon renewal ceremony only because pack law required every unbonded Omega to be present. She stood near the back in a plain gray dress, carrying a tray of glasses while noble families gathered beneath silver lanterns. Vanessa Cole noticed her first. "They allowed you in here?" she asked loudly. Caleb Morgan turned, shame flickering across his face before he looked away. "She is serving," he said. "That is all she is suited for." The words still hurt, but not as deeply as they once had. Claire tightened her grip on the tray before she could step away. Ethan entered the hall. Every conversation stopped. He walked past the council, past the waiting Omegas, and came directly to Claire. Without touching her, he lifted the heavy tray from her hands. "No one speaks for her while she is standing here," he said. Then he looked only at Claire. "Do you want to leave?" She nodded. "Yes." Ethan set the tray aside and opened the nearest door. Claire walked out under her own power, with the Alpha King following several steps behind. Across the hall, Dr. Mason Hale stared at the fading silver lines beneath her wrist, and fear drained the color from his face. Claire did not stop walking until the music from the moon renewal ceremony had faded behind the trees. The path to Moonwater Lake shimmered beneath the silver lanterns, and Ethan followed at a respectful distance, close enough to protect her, but far enough not to feel like a command. At the cottage, Ruth Bennett was waiting beside the fireplace with Maisie asleep under a quilt. One look at Claire's uncovered wrist made the older woman rise. The silver lines beneath Claire's skin were almost gone. "It is time," Ruth said quietly. She opened a locked wooden box and removed a small glass bottle containing dried black leaves dusted with silver. Claire recognized the bitter scent at once. It was the same medicine Dr. Mason Hale had given her after Caleb rejected her. "Silverthorn," Ruth explained. "In careful amounts, it dulls pain. In stronger doses, it can silence a wolf spirit." Claire stared at the bottle. "Mason said he was saving my life. He was hiding what you might become." Ruth's voice trembled with restrained anger. Claire's mother had carried the rare gift of the moon healers, a power that could sense fear, ease suffering, and expose corruption within sacred bonds. If Claire's ability had awakened fully, she would have known that her rejection ceremony had been manipulated. Caleb's family feared a gifted Omega could challenge their influence, so Mason used Silverthorn to seal her wolf and declared the damage permanent. Claire looked toward the window, where the moon rested above the lake. 3 years of shame collapsed into one terrible truth. She had never failed to awaken. Someone had forced her into silence. The door opened, and Ethan entered with Daniel. His expression hardened when he saw the bottle. "Mason will be detained tonight." "No," Claire said. Ethan stopped. Power seemed to fill the small cottage, but he did not direct it at her. "He harmed you. Then I will be the one to prove it." Claire's hands shook, yet her voice did not. "If you arrest him because you are king, everyone will say I hid behind your authority. I need the records from the healing chamber. I need Caleb to admit what he knew. I need my own voice in this." Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You will have whatever help you choose." Ruth revealed that Mason kept every treatment ledger beneath the Old Pack infirmary. At sunrise, Claire would enter with Ruth while Daniel secured the hallway. Ethan offered to accompany them, but Claire refused. The hurt in his eyes was brief and carefully hidden. Outside the cottage, he found her standing near the lake. "I owe you another truth," he said. "I did not come to Silver Creek by chance. I came looking for you." Claire turned slowly. "Because you thought I could calm your wolf." "At first. Then every kind word was part of a cure." "No." Ethan stepped closer, then stopped before crossing the space she had not invited him into. "You gave me peace, Claire. But that is not why I respect you." She wanted to believe him. That frightened her more than doubt. "Please stay away from me until this is over." Ethan lowered his head. "As you wish." When Claire returned inside, Maisie's quilt was empty. The back door stood open, moving gently in the wind. Small footprints crossed the wet grass and disappeared into the forest. On the doorstep lay a single black silverthorn leaf, and the trail led toward the abandoned moon chapel. Claire ran beneath the moonlit pines, following Maisie's small footprints through the wet leaves. Ruth remained behind to summon Daniel, but Claire could not wait. The abandoned moon chapel stood nearly a mile from the cottage, its pale tower rising above the forest like a forgotten warning. As she drew closer, her mother's pendant grew warmer against her chest. A faint voice moved through the darkness within her. "Hurry." The chapel doors stood open. Inside, Maisie waited beside the ruined altar, frightened but unharmed. Dr. Mason Hale stood several feet away, holding an old leather ledger against his chest. "Claire," Maisie whispered. Claire forced herself to breathe slowly. "Come to me, sweetheart." Mason raised one hand. "Not yet. His voice lacked its usual confidence. "You were supposed to remain silent. You were supposed to accept what the pack gave you." "You mean what you took from me?" Moonlight poured through the broken ceiling, illuminating rows of names inside the open ledger. Claire recognized her own. Beside it, Mason had recorded repeated doses of silverthorn. Caleb's father had signed every page. "Give me the moonstone," Mason said. "It is the only thing that can restore your wolf completely. Without it, no one can prove what I did." Claire understood then. He did not want the pendant for its power. He wanted to destroy the final evidence. Footsteps sounded behind her. Ethan entered with Daniel and the royal guards, his expression calm, but his wolf pressed close beneath the surface. Mason stepped backward, fear sharpening his scent. "Your Majesty, she is dangerous. Her gift can influence the mind." "Claire has never taken a choice from anyone," Ethan replied. "Can you say the same?" Mason reached toward Maisie, not touching her, but the child flinched. Ethan's control slipped. The chapel windows trembled as his eyes turned silver. His breathing deepened, and the old scars beneath his sleeves began to glow. Claire felt the war shade rising inside him, fed by Maisie's fear and every painful memory the chapel awakened. "Everyone stay back," Daniel ordered. Ethan shifted into the enormous black wolf Claire had seen in her dream. The guards lowered their weapons, uncertain whether he still recognized them. Mason fled through a side passage, leaving the ledger behind. Claire did not follow him. Maisie needed her. Ethan needed her more. The wolf paced beneath the broken dome, trapped between instinct and memory. Thunder rolled beyond the mountains. Rain began to fall through the open ceiling. Claire guided Maisie toward Daniel, then turned back. "Claire, do not," Daniel warned. She stepped forward anyway. The scene felt strangely familiar, as though time had folded around her. Ethan's silver eyes found hers, wild with pain. Claire moved closer until only a few feet remained between them. "You came when I was afraid," she whispered. "Now let me come to you." He lowered his head, trembling beneath the storm. Claire placed both hands against his dark fur. Her pendant flared with silver light. Pain rushed through her, cold and endless, but beneath it, she found Ethan's true voice calling from somewhere far away. She reached deeper. The silent place inside her opened. Her wolf awakened with a clear, powerful breath. Claire drew the war shade away from Ethan and into the light between them. The chapel filled with a low silver glow. Ethan became still. Then Claire's knees weakened, and the last thing she felt was the Alpha King catching her before she reached the floor. Ethan caught Claire before she reached the floor, shifting back into human form as the silver light faded from the chapel. Her body felt cold in his arms, and her breathing had become so faint that even Daniel could barely hear it. "Bring the healers," Ethan ordered, but Claire's moonstone flared again before anyone could move. A thread of pale light wrapped around Ethan's wrist and pulled him into darkness. He opened his eyes beneath a moonless sky. The chapel was gone. In its place stood a silent forest covered in silver mist. Ancient trees leaned over a narrow path, their branches heavy with change that whispered in familiar voices. Broken, unwanted, empty. Ethan followed the sound until he found Claire kneeling beside a frozen stream. She wore the same pale dress, but shadows clung to its edges, and silver vines circled her wrists. Several feet away, a white she-wolf lay behind a wall of dark thorns, watching Claire with tired blue-gray eyes. "Claire," Ethan called. She looked up, startled. "You should not be here." "Neither should you." He moved toward her, but the ground trembled and the chains tightened. Caleb's voice drifted through the trees, cold and distant. "No one will ever choose what is incomplete." Mason's voice followed. "Some wolves are better left to sleep." Claire lowered her head. They were right for so long that I forgot what my own voice sounded like. Ethan reached for the nearest chain, but it burned with silver light beneath his hand. Claire shook her head. "You cannot break them." Then tell me how to help. Her eyes filled with fear. I do not know. The white wolf rose behind the thorns, weak but alert. Ethan understood. Claire's wolf had never abandoned her. It had waited behind every lie, protecting the part of her that still believed she deserved kindness. He sat beside Claire instead of pulling at the chains again. I came here looking for someone who could quiet the darkness in me, he said. I thought healing meant taking pain away. You taught me that sometimes it means staying when the pain cannot leave yet. Claire looked at the marks around her wrists. I'm just a broken omega. Ethan's voice softened. Then I will be the one to mend you. She flinched, and he continued before the old voices could twist his words. Not because you were less. Not because you belong to me. Because no one should have to mend alone. Ethan placed his hand on the earth between them. He did not touch her chains. He did not command them to open. He simply stayed. Claire stared at his hand, then slowly placed hers beside it. Warmth spread through the frozen ground. One by one, the voices in the trees began to fade. Claire turned toward the white wolf. I thought you were gone, she whispered. The wolf stepped through the thorns. They dissolved like mist around her silver-white fur. She approached Claire and pressed her forehead to hers. The chains fell away. Light rushed through the forest, turning every dark branch to pearl beneath a rising moon. Ethan felt Claire's heartbeat return, steady and strong. The world shifted. He opened his eyes in the ruined chapel, with Claire still in his arms. She drew a sudden breath, and every lantern in the sanctuary came alive. Her eyes opened, bright with silver light. Deep inside Ethan, his wolf bowed. Deep inside Claire, another wolf answered. Claire woke beneath the silver glow of the chapel lanterns, with Ethan still holding her carefully. For the first time in 3 years, the silence inside her was gone. Her white she-wolf stood within her, like moonlight given breath, calm, watchful, and entirely her own. Maisie rushed forward and wrapped both arms around Claire's waist. Ruth arrived moments later with tears shining in her eyes, while Daniel lifted Mason's abandoned ledger from the floor. The records were clear. Mason had hidden the Silverthorn treatments, and Caleb's family had approved every dose. By sunrise, the Silver Creek Council gathered inside the Great Hall. Mason was removed from his position and sent before the royal court for judgment. Caleb lost his claim to future leadership after admitting that he had known Claire was being silenced. Vanessa lowered her eyes as the truth was read aloud before the pack. Claire stood in the center of the hall, but this time she did not feel small. Ethan remained several steps behind her. He did not speak for her. He did not claim her. He simply gave her the space to tell the truth in her own voice. You called me broken because it was easier than admitting what you had done, Claire said. But I was never empty. I was waiting to hear myself again. No one answered. They did not need to. Later, beneath the evening moon, Ethan met Claire beside Moonwater Lake. The bond between them moved quietly beneath her skin, warm but patient. The council expects me to name a Luna, he said. Claire looked at him. And what do you expect? Nothing you do not freely choose. Ethan lowered himself to one knee, not as a king before a subject, but as a man offering trust. Claire Bennett, will you walk beside me? She thought of every voice that had once defined her. Then she listened to the one within. Yes, she said. Months later, the abandoned cottage became Moonwater Sanctuary, a place for rejected omegas, orphan pups, wounded animals, and soldiers who carried invisible burdens home from war. Maisie filled its halls with laughter. Ruth trained young healers. Ethan visited without guards whenever he could. And Claire never again confused gentleness with weakness. On the first full moon of winter, she stepped onto the frozen shore and shifted into a silver-white wolf. Ethan joined her in his black wolf form. Together, they raised their voices beneath the stars, not because destiny had repaired them, but because love had given them a safe place to become whole. Perhaps that is the lesson this story leaves behind. People are often called broken when others do not understand their pain, their silence, or the strength it takes to keep going. In my view, true love does not erase every scar, and it does not demand that someone heal on command. It stays, listens, and makes room for choice. Claire did not become worthy because a king chose her. Ethan recognized her because she had always been worthy. Do you believe love can help someone heal, or must healing begin from within? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more stories about courage, destiny, and the quiet strength that brings wounded hearts back to light.